Okay, we're back. El Rushbo, with half my brain tied behind my back, just to make it fair. All right, here we go to the Democrat. They called it a town hall last night on CNN. It was moderated by Andrew Cuomo and I think some others maybe. And they did it one candidate at a time. They started out with Crazy Bernie, who promised to raise everybody's taxes and make Medicare free to everybody. I listened to these guys talk about how they're going to raise tax. I mentioned this once before, and I know it's a rhetorical thing, but there's a serious point of why even collect taxes? If you're why even worry about it other than to control people? Because the collection of taxes and raising revenue is irrelevant to the way you spend money. They're spending money we don't have already. So what is the big deal about raising taxes? Why even worry about the deficit? They don't make any pretense of worrying about the deficit. We're $20 trillion in debt. You listen to these people talk, and there's no end to this. They're going to spend it. They're going to raise tax. 94 million Americans not working. They can't pay any taxes. If people still working don't earn enough money to pay any significant increases in taxes. And yet here's Crazy Bernie going on and on about it as though we're never in debt, we have no deficit, and the rich are not paying anything in taxes. And nobody is. And it's about time we raised everybody's taxes to a responsible level and then give away more free stuff. Juxtaposed against $20 trillion of national debt, $8 trillion of it with Obama, $7 trillion, $8 trillion of it created in the last 7 years. Well, the whole idea of raising revenue to run the government is meaningless when you compare it to the way these people want to spend it and do spend it. Anyway, Bernie was first, then Martin O'Malley, and then Hillary brought up the rear. And they had audience members asking questions, and it looks like many of the questions were written in advance and handed to people who were selected to stand up and ask them. Here is audience member Elena Dietz, who is leaning toward Sanders. She says, Secretary Clinton, earlier this month, Vice President Joe Biden said you were a newcomer to the issue of income inequality while praising Senator Sanders for his authentic voice on the issue. How do we know that you will keep this issue a top priority? Now, forgive me, but I just don't believe your average Democrat voter thinks that way nor speaks that way. I think what happened here is the Democrat Party decided the issues it wanted addressed, put them in the form of questions from a compliant, willing audience of Democrat voters, made to look like these are actual concerns of Democrat voters. Now, I'm not saying they don't care about income inequality, but nobody's going to run. Last week, Joe Biden said this about Bernie and you and this. This is too perfect. There's too many foils in this. Too many fall guys have been set up for Hillary to knock over. And they just happen to be the two guys being touted as potential replacements for her if she ends up indicted or behind bars. So anyway, here's the question again. Secretary Clinton, earlier this month, Vice President Joe Biden, this is the kind of question that Chuck Todd would ask you on Meet the Press. Secretary Clinton, earlier this month, Vice President Biden said that you were a newcomer to the issue of income inequality while praising Senator Sanders for his authentic voice on the issue. How do we know that you will keep income inequality a top priority?
I have a 40-year record of going after inequality. And not only economic inequality, racial inequality, sexist inequality, homophobic inequality, the kinds of things that go after people to put them down and push them back.
What?
I have a really long history of taking on all kinds of inequality. And when I went to Beijing in 1995 and said human rights were women's rights and women's rights were human rights, that was a statement about inequality, economic inequality, education inequality, cultural inequality, every kind of inequality you can imagine.
Okay, you see what I mean? That answer was just lying in wait, just waiting to be spoken. There's nothing ad-lib about that answer. Now, she talks about how she'd been doing all this stuff here for 40 years. That's a hell of a record, by the way, of failure. 40 years, and they're still complaining about it all. And these people, they were still complaining about the state of the country, even after 7 years of them and Obama running it last night. This is the thing that continually amazes me. It's the Limbaugh theorem all over the place. It's like this country's been on autopilot from George W. Bush ever since 2001. They haven't been able to stop anything, and finally, we're going to stop it. Mrs. Clinton detailing everything that's gone wrong, including the last 7 years. Never once mentioning that they have been running the show the whole time. But we went back. Mrs. Clinton here talks about her 40-year record, racial inequality, homophobic inequality, how she's been fighting homophobic inequality for 40 years. That would mean that Mrs. Clinton has a record of being pro-gay marriage, right? Well. As we went back to the graveyard of forgotten sound bites here, we found November 20th, 2002, PMS NBC, a special hardball college tour with Hillary Clinton at the University of Albany, Chris Matthews, back when he was sane, well, relatively speaking, was interviewing Hillary Clinton during the Q&A. This goes by fast. It's an 8-second soundbite. So turn up your radios here. Give you a while to do that. 3, 2, well, I'll give you here's Matthew's question. Do you think New York State should recognize gay marriage? You'll hear him ask the question, and here's her answer.
Do you think New York State should recognize gay marriage?
No.
No. Okay.
Hey, folks, that's just like 14 years ago. But she said she's been always for it. She did last night. In addition to this, she said she'd always been in the camp supporting gay marriage. Just like Obama wants you to believe. But none of these people were for gay marriage until, 3-4 years ago. None of them. Every damn one of them, when they were running for office prior to 2012, were opposed to gay marriage, including Mrs. Clinton. The next question came from a millennial, audience member Taylor Gipple, Iowa native, leaning for Bernie Sanders. Question, Mrs. Clinton, it feels like there's a lot of young people like me who are very passionate supporters of Bernie Sanders, and I just don't see the same enthusiasm from younger people for you. In fact, I've heard from quite a few people my age that they think you're dishonest. But I'd like to hear from you on why you feel the enthusiasm isn't there. So the question, Mrs. Clinton, I'm a millennial. A lot of my friends love Bernie Sanders. They think you're a liar. But I don't care about that. I want you to tell me why they're so enthusiastic for Bernie. The guy just told her that his friends think that she is dishonest. But he doesn't ask about that. He wants to know what she thinks about why there's more enthusiasm for crazy Bernie.
I've been around a long time. People have thrown all kinds of things at me. And, I can't keep up with it. I just keep going forward. They fall by the wayside. They come up with these outlandish things. They make these charges. I just keep going forward because there's nothing to it. They throw all this stuff at me, and I'm still standing. You have to say to yourself, why are they throwing all of that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because I've been on the front lines of change and progress since I was your age.
Yeah, well, this kid doesn't think you have much to show for it. That's the point. And that's the whole reaction. I've been doing this, and I've been doing that, I've been leading this, I've been fighting for that, and yet you're still complaining about all of it. As though nothing's gotten done. There's still inequality out there. There's still bigotry out there. There's still racism out there. There's still sexism out there. There's still unfairness out there. There's still mean-spiritedness out there. There's still extremism out there. There's still Republicans out there. She's been fighting it her whole life. So here you're a millennial. You're basically standing up asking your grandmother. And Hillary's answer, I don't know that that's what millennials want. It sounds like a parent or grandparent lecturing you, yelling at you, telling you, hey, look, bud, I've been fighting in the trenches while you were just a whippersnapper eating Cheerios with your Snickers bar. I've been out there fighting for real change my whole thyroid problem. Cough! I mean life. That's Mrs. Clinton's answer. Grab the hook.